I still remember that morning as I approached Buckingham Palace, the sun whispering a gentle hello, painting the sky with soft hues of gold and pink. The morning mist clung to the ancient stones, creating an almost mystical atmosphere around the palace grounds. As the sun rose higher, its rays struck the gleaming gates and polished railings, turning them into ribbons of light against the historic facade. Little did I know that I was about to witness one of the most unforgettable events of my life. Standing at his post, drawing attention without even trying, was Michael Bennet, a royal guard. He was 27 years old, moving with the gravity of a much older soldier. His service record was a testament to his dedication. 3 tours of duty, numerous commendations, and now the honor of guarding the palace. The morning light danced on his scarlet uniform, the brass buttons gleaming like stars against the immaculate fabric. His bearskin cap sat perfectly, adding a few more inches to his already impressive height. His posture was flawless. Shoulders back, chin up, his eyes focused on a distant point beyond the crowd. Not a single thread was out of place on his uniform. Even his boots shone with a mirror-like gleam, reflecting the morning light. A crowd of tourists was beginning to gather, their excited chatter creating a constant hum around the palace grounds. Cameras clicked incessantly, their flashes competing with the natural sunlight. Children pointed and whispered, some trying to catch Michael's attention, others hiding bashfully behind their parents. The voice of a tour guide rose above the general buzz, explaining the significance of the guards and the continuity of their ancient traditions. The guards are not just for show, the guide said, his voice carrying clearly across the square. They are elite soldiers, trained to protect and serve. A few tourists nodded in appreciation, while others continued to take photos, viewing Michael more as a tourist attraction than a military serviceman. As the morning warmed, more visitors crowded into the square, some keeping a respectful distance, content to observe and admire, others moving closer to the barriers, angling for the perfect shot for their photos. Michael remained still, his discipline evident in every line of his posture, and though his eyes were fixed ahead, he missed nothing, honed by years of military service. Amid all of this, Michael stood, like the palace itself, a bastion of unwavering dedication, guarding the crown for centuries. His presence spoke of something far greater than just a man in uniform. He was a living symbol of tradition, honor, and duty. Little did he know that this ordinary morning was about to test those values in a way he could never imagine. From within the sea of tourists, a young man in his mid-20s pushed his way forward. His presence seemed designed to draw attention. His hair was styled. He wore a tight t-shirt that read Social Media King, and in one hand he held a large iced coffee. His name was Ryan Parker, and his social media account boasted 500,000 followers who loved his wild antics. Guys, check this out. Ryan's voice cut through the respectful murmurs of the crowd as he positioned himself for a selfie video. We're gonna make this dude go viral. He flashed a peace sign at his phone, his other hand adjusting an expensive camera around his neck. Behind him, 3 of his friends giggled, their own phones already recording. You can't make him laugh, one of his friends shouted, loud enough for the surrounding tourists to hear. I bet you $100. He won't even blink. Ryan's face lit up with this challenge. He handed his coffee to his friend and walked toward Michael, deliberately stepping into the guard's line of sight. Hey, buddy, he called out, waving his hand dramatically. Your hat is bigger than my future. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd, while most people shifted uncomfortably. Michael remained perfectly still, his eyes fixed forward, his posture unwavering. The morning sun hit his metals, sending out glints of light across the square, silent testimonies to a service Ryan was blind to. Come on, Ryan urged, moving closer to the barriers. Don't be such a stick in the mud. We're all just here to have fun, aren't we? Turning to his audience, he played to the cameras. Look at this guy. He probably thinks he's too important to acknowledge us. His friends laughed even louder, emboldened by their leader's audacity, one of them wearing a matching goofy t-shirt. He flicked a paper napkin near Michael's polished boots. The crowd collectively held its breath, But Michael didn't even flinch. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ryan announced, raising his voice theatrically, "I present to you London's most expensive statue." He pulled out his phone again, narrating to his followers. "So, we're at Buckingham Palace, and this guy literally gets paid to ignore people. Isn't that the best job?" A mother steered her young son away, whispering something about respect, while an elderly couple shook their heads in disapproval. But Ryan was too caught up in his performance to notice the changing mood of the crowd. "Watch this," he said to his phone, then turned back to Michael. "Hey, Queen's pal, I heard those hats are faux fur. Maybe they got it at a discount store. Am I right?" His friends howled with laughter, but their voices seemed to echo alone in the increasingly tense atmosphere. Ryan took his coffee back from his friend, taking a long sip through the straw while scrutinizing Michael's expressionless face. "Maybe he's not ignoring us," he mused loudly. "Maybe he's just sleeping with his eyes open. Should we check?" The crowd had grown, drawn to the spectacle, phones coming out of pockets and purses. But these were no longer recording Ryan's antics, but his increasing disrespect. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation of what might come next. Michael remained unchanged, a pillar of dignity against the attempts at provocation, his eyes fixed forward, his posture perfect. But there was a slight tensing in his jaw, a subtle shift that only the most observant could notice. The morning had gone from peaceful to precarious, and everyone could feel it. Emboldened by his reflection in the sea of phone cameras, Ryan decided to escalate his performance. He moved even closer to the barrier, the iced coffee sloshing dangerously in its plastic cup. "Guys, I don't think our friend is too hospitable," Ryan announced to his live audience, his voice dripping with mock concern. "I mean, I came all the way from America for this." He checked his phone screen, grinning at the deluge of comments coming in. "The fans want more action, dude." A uniformed, dignified man stepped forward from the crowd. "Young man," he called out, his voice firm but stern. "That uniform deserves respect." Ryan turned, lighting up at the chance for some new drama. "Yeah, it's just cloth and buttons, old-timer. I could buy this whole outfit off the internet." His friends giggled, but their laughter sounded more nervous now. They were starting to realize the growing hostility of the other tourists. Turning back to Michael, Ryan started a theatrical walk, exaggerating every step, a crude imitation of the guards' disciplined movements. "Look at me. I'm so important," he mocked, waving his arms in ridiculous arcs. "I can't move because tradition." More phones emerged from the crowd, but the expressions behind them were increasingly disapproving. "This is totally going viral," one of Ryan's friends shouted, his voice a little shaky. He'd noticed a palace security officer watching from a distance. The crowd had grown, forming a semicircle around the scene. Parents were trying to explain to their children why the man's behavior was wrong. Japanese tourists lowered their cameras, apologizing to the guard as they walked away from the spectacle. "Hey, statue man," Ryan continued, taking another sip of his coffee. "I heard they trained these guys for months just to stand still. That must be a hard class. Did you practice in front of the mirror?" He paused for effect, then added mockingly, "Or did your mom teach you how to stand up straight?" Michael remained motionless, but those closest to him could see the slightest change, a new intensity about his face, a storm gathering there even though his eyes remained fixed ahead. His grip on his rifle had tightened almost imperceptibly. It was the only sign that he was aware of the rising tension. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ryan announced, throwing his arms out wide. "I think this guy needs a little help. He's clearly having a rough day. Maybe he needs a drink to loosen up." He brandished the nearly empty coffee cup, the ice cubes rattling ominously. The veteran stepped forward again. "Enough is enough, son. You've had your fun." Ryan's eyes gleamed with malicious delight. "We haven't even gotten to the fun part yet." He turned to his phone, addressing his followers directly. "Okay, guys, watch this. We're about to make history." The tension in the square was reaching its breaking point. Even Ryan's friends had begun to back away, sensing that a line was about to be crossed. The security officer had started to move closer, but he was still too far away to intervene immediately. A few more phones went up, their owners knowing that a dramatic event was about to unfold. The morning had gone from peaceful to perilous, and everyone could feel it. Michael stood with resolve, his commitment to duty visible in every line of his stance. But there was something else now, a barely perceptible readiness, like a coiled spring waiting to be released. The next few moments would test not only his training, but what it meant to wear the uniform. "It's grand finale time," Ryan announced, his voice cutting through the tense atmosphere. His coffee cup held high, making sure his phone was catching every moment, the ice clattering against the plastic as the sun caught the drops of condensation. The crowd collectively held their breath, sensing the coming disaster. A child's voice cried, "Mommy, he's not going to do it," but was quickly shushed. The veteran took a step forward, his face etched with concern, but he was still too far to intervene. "Let's see if our friend's thirsty," Ryan said to his live audience, "because this is going to be the most expensive coffee in London." Time seemed to slow as Ryan pulled his arm back. The security officer had begun to run, but was still about 20 yards away. Michael remained perfectly still, though a slight tension had formed in his jaw, the only sign that he was aware of what was about to happen. "3, Ryan shouted, grinning at his phone. 2, his friends had their cameras up, but their laughter was nervous. 1, the coffee cup left Ryan's hand, arcing through the air, the brown liquid and ice crystals caught in the sunlight as it flew. The crowd gasped, phones recording from every angle. The coffee was heading straight for Michael's face and pristine uniform. That's when everything changed. Michael's right hand moved, a fluid motion born of years of military training. It shot out and did the impossible. He caught the cup midair. Not a single drop touched his uniform. The crowd was stunned by the display of reflexes that seemed to defy human limitations. For the first time that morning, Michael's eyes locked directly on Ryan's. The tourist's smug grin vanished instantly, replaced by a look of utter shock. The silence in the square was absolute. The only sound was the ice inside the caught cup. "Oh my God," someone whispered, the words clear in the silence. When Michael's voice came, it was like a thunderclap echoing through the square. "That's enough." Every word was precisely measured, carrying the weight of centuries of tradition. He didn't shout, he didn't need to. His tone carried an authority that made Ryan physically step back. The crowd reacted with a mix of gasps and awe, phones recording as Michael slowly lowered the cup to his side, never taking his eyes off Ryan, maintaining his perfect posture. There was something in that look that completely deflated the tourist's bravado. I just... Ryan stammered, his phone dropping to his side, his live stream forgotten. His friends had already started to fade into the crowd, trying to disappear. The security officer finally reached them, but stopped as he realized Michael had the situation completely under control. The guard's presence had transformed. He was still maintaining his ceremonial posture, but he was now radiating an authority that filled the entire square. Ryan's face had gone from shock white to crimson red, as he realized that his viral moment had indeed arrived, but not in the way he had imagined. The crowd's phones were still recording, but now it was capturing his humiliation rather than his imagined triumph. Michael's next movements were a masterclass in military precision. Still holding the captured coffee cup, he took one measured step forward, his boots striking the stone with a sound that echoed across the suddenly silent square. Though he did not raise his voice, his next words reached every corner of the crowd. In our 250 years of guarding this palace, Michael's voice was calm, but it had an edge of steel. We have faced revolution, war, and countless attempts at provocation. And you here think that a cup of coffee would achieve what armies could not. The crowd stood frozen, transfixed by the unprecedented silence. Ryan's phone was still live, but he seemed to have forgotten about social media. His face was devoid of color as Michael continued. "This uniform," Michael's words were measured, each one falling like a precise hammer blow, "represents the sacrifices of generations. Men who wore this before me, who died defending what you mock. It is not a costume, sir. It is a symbol of duty, honor, and respect, the meaning of which is clearly lost on you. A murmur of agreement went up from the crowd. One person began to applaud, but quickly stopped, sensing that Michael was not done. The security officer had positioned himself behind Ryan, but did not interfere. He understood this lesson in respect needed to be given. Michael's next move was fluid, as though choreographed. He rotated the coffee cup in his hand, examining it with exaggerated care. "Your name is on the cup," he stated, his voice having almost turned to a conversational tone. "Ryan Parker, along with your social media handles. How convenient for the authorities." Ryan swallowed hard, his Adam's apple visibly moving. His friends had already melted into the crowd, leaving him to face the consequences. The veteran who had tried to intervene earlier now stood with a satisfied smile, nodding at Michael's handling of the situation. "The Metropolitan Police take a very dim view of assaulting the Royal Guard," Michael continued, his tone never rising above measured. "I think they'll be quite interested in the multiple videos of your actions today." He gestured lightly to the forest of phones still recording the scene. A woman called out from the crowd, "I've already sent my video to the police website." Others nodded in agreement, already busy uploading the evidence of Ryan's misbehavior. Michael's next words were delivered with a precision that cut through the last of Ryan's bravado. "You came here to gain attention, Mr. Parker," Michael said. "Congratulations, you achieved it, along with charges of attempted assault on the Royal Guard. I hope that is the type of viral content you were hoping to create." The security officer finally stepped forward, placing a firm hand on Ryan's shoulder. "Sir, you're going to have to come with me." Michael's final gesture was a masterclass in military poise. He tucked the coffee cup into his belt, brought his rifle to its proper position, and returned to his stance, all in one fluid motion, demonstrating his years of training. His eyes were once again fixed forward, but not before sending one last glance at Ryan, a look that made the tourist visibly flinch. The moment Michael returned to his duty, the crowd broke into spontaneous applause. The sound echoed like thunder across the square, bounced off the palace walls, drowning out Ryan's protests. Phones were up as the security officer escorted him away, but they were capturing something completely different now. The triumph of tradition over disrespect. "Now that's how it's done," the veteran shouted, his voice thick with emotion. "In 30 years of service, I've never seen better." He stepped forward, removed his service cap, and held it over his heart. Other veterans in the crowd joined him, offering silent salutes. A child, about 7 or 8 years old, tugged at his mother's arm. "Mommy, I want to be like him when I grow up." The mother smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "Then you'll need to learn what real strength looks like. Sweetie, it's not about jokes and social media. It's about dignity, like that gentleman just showed us." The crowd's mood had changed completely. Those who had initially laughed at Ryan's antics now looked ashamed, some even deleting their earlier recordings. A group of teens who had been live streaming quickly ended their broadcast, one of them muttering to himself, "That was real respect." "Did you see how he caught that cup?" shouted one. It was like something out of a superhero movie. "Better than a superhero," corrected an elderly woman, her voice clear. "A superhero would show off. This is what true service looks like. Power with perfect control." Social media was already ablaze. Ryan's live stream, meant for ridicule, had become a lesson in consequences, viewed over 50 million times. Respect for the Royal Guard was trending worldwide. When disrespect meets discipline, that's what true power looks like. How to catch a coffee and deliver a lesson in humility all at once. Ryan's social media empire had crashed. Sponsors had fled, followers vanished, and his apology video had only fueled more criticism. The court fine had stung, but the permanent UK ban had hurt even more. Meanwhile, Michael was commended at a palace ceremony, remaining humble as ever. "I was just doing my duty," he said, "as every guard before and after me would do." The coffee cup became an educational exhibit at the Royal Military Academy. It was a reminder that sometimes the quietest actions speak the loudest, and that tradition upheld with dignity will always triumph over fleeting fame. Today, as tourists gather at Buckingham Palace, They whisper about the coffee cup incident, passing on a lesson in respect that will echo for generations. If you enjoyed this tale of the Royal Guard, the triumph of dignity over disrespect, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss our next story of incredible tradition, honor, and justice from Buckingham Palace. Share with your friends who appreciate true heroes, and join our growing community of Royal Guard story enthusiasts. New stories every day.